so I'm going to be projecting. If you can't hear me in the back, let me know, because that means probably the computer's not picking me up either. Thank you for coming. It's the last one of the day. If you feel like it, you should give a good stretch, because I'm going to try to keep the energy high, but it also, you had food and all kinds of stuff earlier. So thanks for coming. We're going to talk about engaging accepted students through WordPress. It's specifically a case study on a project that I worked on end of last year and into up until like 2 months ago, actually. I do own a service design and product agency called Bravery. We're based in Austin, Texas. Short little thank you. Yes, there are Texans in there. Short little blurb about what we do. Up until about 6 months ago, we were doing web design and redevelopment in 4 colleges and universities. And I'm trying to shift that a little bit, because you all know how fun the politics are. But we'll and they're fine. But if you wanna at me, please at me. It's also going to be up on the whiteboard here too. Bravery.co is the website, and Bravery Me is also Twitter. But me directly is at Joel Goodman, and I'll be happy to answer questions later, or just retweet your insights that you pick up, or whatever else. So let's get going. Quick roadmap for today's presentation, just so you know where we're going. First, we're going to start with framing the conversation that we have and tell you what led me to doing this project. And then we're going to get into how the product planning process went, and kind of the thought processes that we had to go through kind of turned out as we were working with our client. We're going to talk about some political intrigue that happened, the real juicy stuff where we had Vice Provost really excited about something we couldn't do and, didn't make any sense, and how we had to deal with that. And then we're going to get into our realized good intentions at a very stupid large scale. And then finally, I'll pepper you with some learned lessons. There will be some of those littered throughout the rest of the talk as well, because all of this was a lot of learning in general. Sound good?
Yes, sir.
Yes, awesome, great. Okay, so framing the conversation. What's the one thing that every admissions office fears from their accepted students? Summer melt. Exactly. Oh, I missed it. There. This is what happens. It happens everywhere. And so this is my definition. Melt is the phenomenon wherein a student accepted by your institution disappears through the lead up to registration and deposit, never to be heard from again. You don't know where they went. They may not exist anymore. They may have just kind of melted on a sidewalk and gone into some cracks and, down a gutter, and who knows where they're at. And so we try to figure out, how do we stop the melting process? Because what really happens is that, most of our prospective students haven't only applied to our institution, right? They usually have 2 or 3 or 5 or 15 if their parents are really overbearing, that they've applied to, and they've probably gotten into a few of them. Hopefully they're smart enough to have gotten into a few of them. And so melt is what happens, what we call the somewhat slow diminishment of our accepted incoming student population as they decide to attend other institutions, or decide not to go to college, or maybe they just forget to take care of all the things that they have to take care of to actually get to the point where they've enrolled. So for us, our first question was how easy is your registration process? Because that's a big hurdle. A lot of times you'll have an accepted student come in, like, great, I'm going to register, and then they get into a flow and they realize they have 30 steps. They don't really know, they're already a little bit, maybe not afraid, but they're trepidatious. It's a new experience going into college, and they're faced with this massive registration process that's unfamiliar, and a lot of times don't really have a lot of help, and a lot of times those registration processes aren't, shall we say, modern or simple, or they're actually on paper, which does still happen these days. So Loyola Marymount University is a Jesuit university in Los Angeles. They have a gorgeous campus. It's absolutely stunning, and we've been working with LMU for quite a few years. So our relationship with LMU leading up to how they asked us to help them with this melt issue started in 2016 when we took a viewbook, print viewbook that they had, and converted it into something that was digital that they could use. There are a couple things they wanted to do with their digital viewbook. The first reason they wanted something digital was they didn't want like the kind of like flip book thing for one. They wanted something native. They wanted it to cut down on the number of print pieces they were having to ship out to Asia, and thus help them save a little bit of money. So they wanted something that was going to be highly portable and highly easy to share. They had also earlier, I think we're actually overlapping a little bit with the end of this project. They had just redesigned their university website. They'd worked with M. Stoner, who's actually one of the sponsors of this conference, to do that. And M. Stoner actually came to me and said, "Hey, they want to add this thing on. We don't have the time to do it. Can you help us out? Can we give this to you?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. It sounds like fun. No one wants to do these kind of cool things, or no one gets to do these kind of cool things. Is probably really what it is." So we worked with them to convert an already designed print piece into this digital piece. We designed it mobile first. We went from phones up to tablets, up to desktop. And then in 2016, they allowed us to actually redesign the whole thing completely ourselves. And so we took an approach of doing a digital first, mobile first, took it all the way through to the point of actually developing a print piece for them. So this is just an example of what's there. And if you go to viewbook.lmu.edu, you can see sort of what we did. They've changed a lot of photography that I don't think needs better art direction on that. But the overall piece is built the same way. And we did this all on WordPress. Their main university website is on Terminal 4, I think. Yeah, it was on Terminal 4. They needed something lightweight to get it up and running. I was like, well, WordPress is an obviously great candidate for this. They had people that needed to manage the content. And so this is what we ended up with for them. Another couple of examples. We tried really hard to take this piece and tie it in with their new university site. So we were deep linking into a lot of the content that was already there. We didn't want to create this kind of separate walled garden experience where their incoming prospects couldn't actually get back to the actual admission flow, which I think is what happens a lot of times when we build these sorts of things. It's like, oh yay, microsites. Everyone gets real excited, but they don't think about how microsite actually has to lead into the goals of the rest of the university process. So we were very intentional about whenever, say like the LMU facts page, whenever we were bringing in different facts and figures, we were linking these deeper into their website in a hopes to kind of capture the interest that the student or the parent that was viewing this piece might have had in whatever that specific thing was, and get them into the actual admission flow. After that, in 2016, we worked on an outcomes piece for them, because does everyone remember when outcomes sites were all the rage? Yeah. So when they came to us, wanting to do this outcomes site, and they gave us a bunch of examples of these just really ugly websites. And we're looking at it, we're saying, this isn't going to help anyone. You're just kind of like putting a bunch of data on the page and it looks ugly. It's just a web page. It's not going to do anything. And so we want to do something that was a little bit more interactive. So we have animated pie charts that we built into it. We did a bunch of weird, layered SVG parallax stuff as you scroll through the page. There's a really light motion graphic across all the photos on it. We dynamically load a lot of stuff in. Also built on WordPress. Basically all of the stuff that we've done for them has been built on WordPress. And so during all of that, we had been working on this other piece that they had called Future Lions. LMU came to the realization that after we had addressed all of these kind of incoming type of parts, like, oh yes, here we have all these students that are coming in and we want to sell them on this process, and so we have a gorgeous viewbook piece. Now we need to sell their parents, and so we need to kind of back it up a little bit more data. So we want to do this outcomes piece. We also need to sell that to our alumni and our donors so they give us more money, see where our students are actually going. There's that middle portion that they had not really addressed or thought about, where their students are just kind of disappearing. And so originally they had contracted with an agency in Los Angeles to build a product called Future Alliance, and it was this accepted students portal. But it wasn't great. It was really the sort of thing where the student would get an email or a letter, and they type in a URL, and then they would get automatically logged into this website via some cool token handshake thing, and then they had literal digital confetti, like burst out. Which, I mean, have you heard that? I think this is something that leadership actually likes and thinks is helpful, but to me, it just felt really juvenile. And it's like, you know, it's not a 12-year-old that's getting accepted to your college. You can treat them like at least almost adults. And what happened was it kept breaking, and they didn't have a relationship with the agency anymore, but they had a relationship with me, and I had to support this steaming pot. It was terrible. It was the worst. It was the absolute worst. And it got so bad, we were at a point where I was talking to George, who's my contact there. I said, George, I love working with you guys, but there is no way that I can work on this project anymore. If you really want me to help, I'm happy to do it, but we need to rewrite this thing. And so they were receptive to it, and so we started this project planning process. What's to come is basically summed up in this. The idea. This is a direct quote from them as I was meeting with them in product planning. So the idea is to incorporate all the things that people have to do, into the system in a way that's unique and fun, so students will want to come back and see what updates have been done and to check their lists and check off the tasks they have to do, that sort of thing. Which is kind of lofty because, I mean, only certain types of people like to check off. My wife loves to check off lists. She makes lists of lists and that sort of thing, which is great. But I just don't care that much. But they wanted to do that, and in product planning, you actually do have to create kind of lists. So as we got into the product planning portion of it, we needed to find the requirements. So I flew out to LA from Austin, sat down with them, and had actually a really, really great meeting. We spent a whole day on LMU's campus in their offices just talking through exactly what they wanted. Met with their vice provost, met with the people that were going to be responsible for managing the content with this. And when I do those sorts of trips and those sorts of conversations, my goal is to take what they're thinking and try to make it a little bit better and suggest that we, suggest alternate ways of accomplishing the same thing, but hopefully in a more effective way. So we're gonna look a little bit at the requirements that they had here, because it's a long list. So the first was sign in and data sync via Slate. Does anyone know what Slate is? Anyone use it at your institution? Okay, Slate's basically it's basically an admissions CRM. It handles the application part of it. They have loftier goals for it. It's interesting. It's not great. It's okay. It's better than some of the things out there. My main issue with Slate during the process of doing this is I found out that whenever something needs to be changed or isn't quite working right, the CEO goes in and rewrites it. And that's not a way to manage a product, but okay, it kind of worked for them, and it was a better option. LMU had already been using Slate for gathering their applications and their applicants and communicating with them. And so we needed to find a way to work with Slate with the WordPress site we were going to be building on. Second, they wanted a video greeting from the president because, of course, you want a video. This was the second thing on the list that I was talking about. So you know how important the video greeting from the president was. It's actually a very good video. They produced an excellent video for it. Then they wanted a letter or video from the dean that was going to be targeted to the student based on what college they were going into. So the dean of the business college was going to be creating a letter or a video for them. They already had this in their previous thing. It was just not done very well. So we knew that. I was like, okay, targeted, cool, we can do that. And the ability for a student to see what tasks that they need to do had been completed and which ones were still outstanding. Next, so within that, within the tasks, we had a survey completion, which they had like this giant questionnaire, which we will talk about in a little bit because it was a monster. This giant questionnaire that every college and sometimes specific programs or departments would have the students fill out to kind of gauge where they were at, which makes sense. It was just, they overcomplicated it, and we tried to find ways to make it a better experience. Second, placement tests. You all have those, I'm sure. Registration for actually, being registered to the university. Orientation, RSVP for whichever orientation session they're supposed to be in. And then any international documents required for their international students. So from there, they wanted a method to distribute a survey unique to each college, and for those completed surveys to be transmitted to the college representatives. That was that questionnaire I was saying. It's a little complicated. It sounds easy enough. Like, okay, sure, we can just put gravity forms in there. It'd be great. Like, we can do it. It should be so easy. Next, they wanted a how-to video tutorial to display, showing people how to use this thing. And so my argument was, if we're doing our job right designing this, they won't need a tutorial to figure out how to do it. And if you screw it up, like, just talk to us about it. We can find ways around that. But they wanted how-to videos. Luckily, they didn't want me to make those videos, so I kind of dodged that bullet. Next, they wanted a notification section that allows us to communicate with a targeted group of people. Okay, cool, notifications seems pretty progressive. That could be pretty cool. Next, a social media page that can use a student's Facebook login to show the class of page so that those students can then communicate without having to go to Facebook. This is the first political intrigues. Because boss is gonna boss, y'all. Oh my dear. It was this was the one where I sat down, I was having the conversation with the list, and they brought up, I was like, oh no, that's bad. And like, we know. And I love the people I work with there because they understand their bosses are crazy, and they're like we know, but the VP wants it, and we're gonna have to either do it or find a way around it. So luckily that afternoon we had a meeting with the VP and the AVP for admission, and I explained, or I tried to explain, but I explained that for the most part, students aren't gonna want to be chatting on Facebook through your website. Like, what we should do is just find ways to use the data we could get from Facebook at the time. We'll get to that in a minute. To connect them with other students that are maybe from their hometown, or maybe are registered for the same program, and then allow them to friend those people on Facebook elsewhere, and also just push them to their class up page. Like, plenty of ways to do it, but don't make them jump through a hoop to go and do the thing they're already doing. It doesn't make sense. They're not going to use it. It's a waste of time. It was going to cost them more money. I think that kind of convinced them a little bit. So maybe a little bit. So what we did was we replaced number 8 with a method for students to opt in to share certain data, like their hometown, so that they could find other students from their areas to communicate with either on Facebook or Twitter, however they want to do it. At least they would know who this person is, and they had something in common, and they could start making bonds before they actually got to the university. Next, a method for a student to return to where they left off in their processes, and not have to start over each time they log in, which makes sense, and obviously need to be WCAT compliant, and it is. So, and that was actually mine. I pushed that on them. I was like, yeah, it's got to be accessible, guys. So, as we were doing this product planning process, first thing we did was we identified all the student role types that needed access to this product. There were a lot. Next, we identified static reference content. This was content such as stuff about like financial aid, housing, stuff that actually lives on the real website that they wanted to also have here. And so I encouraged them, like, try to make it simpler, like give them bullet points on how to do this stuff and what they actually need to do. Think about the content, think about how you're gonna actually do this and make it work for your students. So it was financial aid, housing, registration, kind of the bulleted list type of stuff. And this content was largely universal with a few caveats. Like the financial aid information was pretty much the same for everyone, except transfers have a little kind of different process, and international students have a little bit of a different process or extra things they had to do. But for the most part, that content was the same. So we rigged up a targeted content shortcode that got super complex, and I'll talk about that later too. Similar, I'm going to use the members plugin ever to manage members. Okay, so basically I just extended members to, well, I rewrote some of members to give us, it was an easy way to extend it. Rewrote part of members to give us shortcodes so that they could wrap a shortcode around a block of text and say, oh, we want to target this to people in this college, or we want this text to only show up to people that are international students or that are transfer students. We had to apply that to a lot of different places. It was pretty cool. And then we also set up a tab interface for just normal page content control. This isn't the most elegant way to do it, but it worked well for them. I think I'm interested in re-implementing something like this in Gutenberg or in another, some other way, but it works pretty well. We basically knew that they had freshman domestic, freshman international, freshman domestic student abroad, transfer domestic, transfer international, transfer domestic student abroad, and then they added no degree at the last minute, which we'll talk about scope creep later, but that happened later. So essentially what we said was, if you're going to do this, like for some things, you can just use your shortcodes, but if your content's going to be wildly different, what you would do is just go in, add the content in for each one of these tabs. This is all built with advanced custom fields. Obviously, you can tell that from the interface. And then I built this little tab filter thing on the front end so that their admins could go in and check that the right content is going to be showing per student. I wanted to build in easy ways, mostly so that they didn't call me every 5 minutes to say they couldn't figure it out. But also, it's really, really difficult to like go through and add a role or a capability to your user and then go to the front end and look and then go back and change that again. It's a waste of time. I wanted to give them a way to quickly and easily find this information out and make sure that the changes that they did looked the way they thought they were going to. Partially because everyone wants to see that they don't want to trust it. They don't want to trust technology. I like numbers and computers. So next, we really started designing. And what we did in this process, we pitched kind of a storyboard to them. So if you haven't really picked on me yet, like this is kind of just a product development cycle that you can use. Like it's just like plan the product and then design the product and then build it and test it and all that stuff. But I wanted to give you a sense of some of the intricacies of how we had to fight and talk some of this stuff out. But we started out with doing this sort of storyboard flow. We had already done a ton of design internally. Like I don't really wireframe often. So I just kind of like hit sketch, went in, started designing the stuff. So we started first with this login screen. I was like, oh, something nice and simple. Like they're going to use their LMU logins. Well, they already used CAS, so we kind of tanked that, and we'll talk about CAS in a minute. And then remember how they wanted the president's president's greeting video to show up? This is the very first thing. We're like, okay, cool. So on first login, you're going to see it one time, and then we had to build the functionality to basically drop a flag in their user meta that said, okay, we watched the video, don't show it to them again, because it would really suck to get in there and see that video every single time. So one of the things we really talked about a lot when we were developing this was this concept of an onboarding flow, because they wanted all these tutorials and stuff. It's like, there's a lot of things they need to set up immediately. Like we're grabbing a lot of stuff from Authentication, which we'll talk about in a sec, but there are a lot of things they need to just kind of set up. And so we decided to go with this kind of tab or this kind of card interface. So first thing we wanted was connect to Facebook. Then we can tell you who your friends are, what other people have similar hometowns to you or whatever. These are swipeable on touch devices, and also as you completed a task, it would auto progress to the next card. We wanted to play around with doing notifications at first. There's some things we couldn't do with it, but so they're not really there. But we wanted to, browser notifications are one thing, but this is one of those things like when you have tasks, having push notification capabilities can be really helpful, especially if they're not done in a super intrusive way. But we wanted to give this easy method for people or for their students to move through these initial steps of things they had to set up or should set up before they actually got in. And the nice thing with this is that we also use some of the targeting logic that we had written to make it so that so that the admissions folks could go in and create new cards, add new things. I'll show you something later that they want to put in a card that is terrible. but we'll see it. And they could reorder these. Like, okay, maybe like we just want people to connect with us on social media first, or we want to test to see if that's going to perform better. They're not really at that point yet, but we'll get them there. And then we designed what we called the user track board, because I didn't want to say dashboard. That's the only reason why it's called a track board. But essentially, what we did was you can see on the left side there's a list of tasks, and if the task had been completed, we put a check mark there. We graded out. We made it a little bit smaller. If the task hadn't been completed, we made it bold and blue and a little bit bigger. And then in the middle, we wanted to reinforce some of these things. So there's a dean's welcome, like I said, and the nice thing is if they click on that, they don't get shown that again. But there are things, for instance, where if you had a task that said you need to pay your deposit, we wanted to reinforce how do I pay my deposit? Like that's great, pay my deposit. What if I don't know what to do? So in the middle, in the new for you section, we were able to give them these sort of line cards to target that content. So we tied them to each other. It's really complicated, but it worked. And if they hadn't paid their deposit yet, we were able to say, okay, here's how you pay your deposit. And they click on the thing, takes them to a page that has the instructions, and then another button out to actually take the action and do it. And this was really about taking actions. We wanted conversions. That's really what it was. Like you're on this site. We have things that you need to do. How do we get you to just do them? We didn't necessarily want them to hang around and read a bunch of stuff. And I mean, there were people that did want that, but the real goal was get them in, get them to take the action, get them to convert, get them deposited, get them on campus. And those actions are the things that reinforce that sort of stuff. So good intentions, stupid scale. And a lot of trial and error because there was a bit. So yeah, I mean, no one's ever like shot from the hip and had like this great idea and then it just works perfectly right all the time, every time. We overpromised on some things probably, and then we had to walk them back because really like when you don't own the stack end to end, like you end up kind of iterating because you run into issues. There's always going to be problems. We didn't own Slate. Slate was owned by LMU, by their devs, by their IT support team. And so we were stuck a little bit trying to say, no, do it this way. And then being like, no, but we're doing it this way. And then us trying to figure out how we were going to make that integration and kind of massage it into the stuff that we wanted. Because we want a very specific experience for these students. It wasn't just like, cool, we're going to write a bunch of cool codes. We're going to make something that looks good and functions really well, has a good user experience, and that they actually want to look at, because the old one was ugly. And the new one was not going to be ugly. So one of the things was our troubles with authentication. So Loyola Marymount uses CAS. Anyone use CAS on their campus for a single sign-on? A few of you? Okay. So they use CAS. They use they do have Active Directory internally. There's a lot of stuff we could do with that. Problem is, prospective students aren't in that system. They're in Slate, and Slate is not connected to that. So we basically had this pool that we had to use. They were using CAS single sign-on for everything, but we had this pool of email addresses that were not LMU email addresses and were not connected to any of the Active Directory services. So we were a little bit worried about it, and then I was reading through the Slate documentation. There's this great article. Slate has a drop-in CAS replacement. It's like, yes, this is gonna be amazing. I don't have to do anything with authentication. It's just gonna work. It's gonna be amazing. It was not amazing. It's not. So we had this very specific need. I mean, so Slate is, honestly, Slate's truly pretty flexible. What we were able to do through the whole thing was take a bunch of user attributes that were stored in Slate, tie them to the user. When we ran a query against that user, all that stuff came back to us. It was cool. It didn't come back to us in the way we thought it was going to come back to us, and that was not cool. With CAS, in recent years has added all these like extra attributes that you can pass with the handshake. So you do the authentication, they go in, you go to the ugly landing login page, because I've never seen a nice one at the university. I'm sorry. I hope yours looks nice if you have CAS. But you go to the CAS login, you type in your stuff, and when you log in, it sends a token out to the CAS server, authenticates, brings it back. Base just brings back an XML readout with a bunch of content, and you can add extra attributes now. So you don't even have to use, you have to do like CAS and Active Directory or LDAP to get all the roles and stuff. You can just pass those roles along with the CAS authentication. It's great. If I'm getting too nerdy, just let me know. But it's a great thing. Except that the plugin that we were using, and actually all of the plugins that we tried to use, did not accept Slate's formatting of those extra attributes, and we had no way to move them. So it was a really difficult thing. And side note, if any of you are plugin developers, opportunity for a premium plugin, go build a CAS plugin that will deal with Slate's extra user attributes, because there are a lot of Slate users out there that will buy it. Just saying. So what do we do? We first sought out a CAS dev that could extend the plugin we were using. Actually, Paul Gilzo was one of the guys I talked to, and he's like, "I think I can." He's like, "I don't have time." I was like, "Oh, great." So we're done. So we tried to find a plugin that supported the extra CAS attributes, and we found some. Like actually, the one we're using supports them, just not Slate's version of it. Because we would have just overhauled the one that we liked, or we would have just extended the one that we liked, but the ones that we were finding that did this, we would have had to completely rewrite them. They were just actually poorly coded once we got under the hood, and we didn't have that time or that budget. So we did what anyone does, and we found a workaround. And so basically, Slate allowed us to make a call to a JSON web service against a user's email address. So a person would log in via Slate CAS. The WordPress CAS plugin we were using would get their first name, last name, and email address, because that was about all we could pull out. And then we would then make a call back to Slate with that email address, import all that user's information, add it as user meta to the user's account, and it kind of worked. It was kind of hacky. But it did work. And there was only one issue that we had, and it was that we couldn't find a way to actually import that data on login, because the hooks fire at the wrong times. And so we had to do that basically every time a page refreshed and we noticed someone was logged in, we updated their data. And that's not the most efficient way to do it, but it worked. So all of that led us to do these targeted personal tasks, or generate these targeted personal tasks that we need to. That thing in the left-hand side that I showed on that mock-up. And these were pretty tricky. We actually had to refactor our method a few times. This is another one of those trial and error things. We did it one way and like, yes, it worked. We're amazing. And then it broke. And then we had to rewrite it. And then it broke for another instance, and we had to rewrite it again. And we just had to keep doing this. But it really came down to, originally we thought, cool, we're going to have these tasks right here in this task list. We're going to have these things in this new for you feed. It's going to be great. And then they disappeared. And then we need to put them other places, and we couldn't because we did it wrong. So these were the initial places that we wanted them: cards, task list, the new for you section. But when we wanted to apply them to other areas of the site, we couldn't do it. So remember when Facebook had that data breach? So that was another one. It was shortly after we launched. We developed this really nice little social media grids. There's a video, latest video, a couple of these Instagram posts we pulled in, and then Facebook deprecated the Instagram API after we had already been done with this project. We didn't really have any more budget, and we didn't really want to work on it anymore. And all those images disappeared; they were gone because we would have had to develop. We would have to go through their whole OAuth issues, and it was a pain. So, good intentions, stupid scale. Fly too close to the sun, y'all. Here's another example. Anyone notice something about what is this? What is this supposed to do? So we were going to do these cool notifications. So you get in and see a little notification indicator up by the menu, and then you go in. You'd have all these notifications. Yeah, we didn't do that. It was very difficult. That was one of those big ones. You know what? They're already getting on the homepage, are getting into their like track board area, and they've got 3 different things telling them what they need to do. They've got a menu, they've got this section in the middle, and they've got their task list. Do we really need notifications? Like, just like bombard them with them? That's how I rationalized it to myself anyway. So I really hope they don't need them, because it just didn't happen. So this is essentially where we ended up. This is what it looked like when we launched. Except I'm not a student there, but we developed some stuff to give them a YouTube video embed on there. They can do a feature where we actually got into scope creep, which was the worst. So here's some lessons learned. Scope creep kills. So one of the ones with that last thing was they kept coming back to us with things like, hey, we want to we really want to have like a default video showing there in case there are no new notifications for them or no things they have to do. All right, great, good idea, cool. Here's some just like placeholder, whatever. Then they wanted like a bunch of random videos, and I wasn't very good because I should have said no. But I kept writing these things. But really what it was as we decided to pull back on certain things, to scale back on certain things. We found ways to make other things bigger, but then we also made the project a little bit larger at the same time. One of the big examples was what I talked about earlier with the questionnaires that were super complicated. And originally I thought, oh, the questionnaires are going to be great. It's just going to be like a multi-page gravity form that we can do, and just like fill it out and go next and fill it out and go next. It's great. But this was kind of the initial set of things that we needed for it. Some of them are pretty easy. Some of it's like, okay, a little tricky, not hard. And then so we realized that they needed to put giant, and I mean like the longest pages of copy you've ever seen in your life in between these forms to explain how to fill out the form. Couldn't persuade them otherwise. We had to build, we built a custom post type and an ACF repeater. And this was after we'd already done like the gravity form stuff. We're like, cool, we're almost done. We had to actually go in and redo that, which is not fun. They also asked us to integrate an image generator. They wanted this in one of those like onboarding cards too. I mean, it's super cute, right? It really is, but guess how well that performed. It was bad. So unknowns also kill. This is the other lesson that I learned. We discovered close to the end of the project a bunch of edge cases the client hadn't thought of at all and hadn't bothered to tell us about. And because we weren't super familiar with everything they were storing in Slate and how that integrated with their banner systems and they had a bunch of different like certain placement tests had to be taken on other applications they had. There were just a whole lot of different things. We found ourselves scrambling at times, either rewriting or modifying or extending the plugins that we had written to handle a lot of this stuff. Or just writing new code entirely to handle all these edge cases. And that wasn't great. All in all, we built something that's really cool, and the metrics show. Like, I mean, they had tons of repeat visitors. They haven't given me any numbers on if it actually helped slow melt, but I assume it did because they've been very happy with it. And all the other metrics that we kind of tracked were really good. The other thing is that there's a lot of room for improvement. Like, there are things that we can do to kind of push this along a little bit more, especially as new technologies come into play. So yeah, any questions? Yeah, anyone?
I'll ask a question.
Yeah.
Right at the end, you mentioned the tools, sort of a tool set that you used to put everything together, how you were building it. Mentioned to every developer here knows advanced custom fields and gravity forms.
Yeah.
Was there an evaluation of other tools that maybe do the same-ish kind of things before doing that? Or just pick them up and run with it?
For me, because they were tool set, because I've done evaluations of those, they were the ones I wanted to use. Okay. They were already using ACF for a lot of other sites when I came and started working with them. Okay. So for them, from a management standpoint, the UX continuity, I think, was important. because they were able to get in and knew what they were doing. I built a lot of like cheat sheet notes for them in the back end. Like, these are the shortcuts you can use, and this is how you do this. This is how you do the targeted content sort of thing. But yeah, overall, like I'd already kind of evaluated a lot of them previously, and so it was one speed to market, so to speak.
Sure.
Yeah, otherwise, there's what we were familiar with.
Yeah. So that sounded amazing. I took a whole bunch of notes as to what the requirements
Awesome.
were, ditching some of the things that I was like, we don't need that. But then you got to the point where it was a nightmare to implement, was scaled back. Have you heard anecdotally, or do you have any hard numbers on, did this actually help with Melt?
I don't have hard numbers on Melt. Anecdotally, yes. I don't know how much the anecdotes are based in numbers.
Sure.
But it's like the clients were very happy with it and kept saying, we're getting a lot of responses from students. Like they told us at least orientation registration was up, like all the RSVPs. So there are specific metrics that definitely did help. I think also they changed they also changed a little bit of their email cycle, like their email cadence alongside of this to help draw people back. And so I think there are a number of different things. Like, we built this thing for them and we said, there are things we're not going to do. Like, we're not handling your emails, we're not handling this stuff, but you're going to have to find other ways to try to push people back to this product as well. Because they're not going to remember, oh yeah, it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter how cool it looks or whatever. And like, oh yeah, I had some things I needed to do, or I wonder if I have anything new that I need to do on that LMU thing. They need to be prompted for it. And that's, any of us are like that, I think. So, yeah. Anyone else? Cool. Well, thank y'all for coming. Thanks for staying awake in the last session of the day. And I hope you had a great conference. Remember to do your evaluations.
That's my job.
Sorry.
Do your evaluations. Make sure you keep it good. Give Joel Goodman a good hand.